After abandoning our identities to become an ordinary couple, both Huo Yan and I regretted it. Thus, in this new life, we instinctively avoided every opportunity that might have brought us together in our past existence. When we met again, he was already a victorious general, triumphantly returning to the capital in glorious triumph. Chance brought us upon a wedding procession, and he inquired, "Whose wedding is this today?" Others replied, "The Pei family." "The second Miss Pei? Why isn't the eldest sister, Pei Wan, here to see her off?" Pei Wan is the bride. Main text: When I learned Huo Yan hadn't attended the Prime Minister's flower viewing banquet, I knew he too had been reborn. In my past life, as the daughter of a minor official, I was relegated to the most remote corner. When others mocked and ridiculed me, he happened upon the scene and came to my defense. That was the beginning of our ill-fated bond. Why call it ill-fated? Because though we fell deeply in love, our families fiercely opposed us. One night, he climbed through my window, took my hand, and said, "Ah Wan, I'll abandon my path to becoming a general. You'll forsake your life as a noble lady. Let us flee together, find a hidden paradise, and stay together forever." Overwhelmed with emotion, I hastily packed our belongings and escaped Jinling with him, faking our deaths. We were both too young then, unaware that leaving behind a life of silk and fine food meant only endless hardship for us. The soil we had to cultivate was too hard. The young master, whose fingers had never touched spring water, ended up with hands full of blisters. The coarse hemcloth was too rough. The young lady, who had never done manual labor, developed a rash. At first, we could still numb ourselves with love, warming each other in our embrace. He felt guilty. "Ah Wan, it's all my fault. I couldn't give you a good life." The young master of the Huo family had always been proud. He believed that even without his clan, he could still build a great enterprise. So when he decided to elope, he brought nothing but the clothes on his back. I had brought some valuables, but they were spent after purchasing our home. Hearing this, he shook his head and smiled. "Husband can grow grain, and I can earn money through embroidery. We have our hands and feet. As long as I'm with you, one feels no hardship." Though she said this, as time dragged on, news arrived of the second young master of the Huo family returning victorious, honored as the great general of peace and martial valor. Huo Yan, who had been fertilizing the crops with cow dung, fell silent. That night, after I fell asleep, he sat by the window all night long. He must have been thinking about how the Huo family had originally intended for him to go into battle. His attitude toward me grew much colder. He began to drift off frequently. He often inquired about news of the second young master of the Huo family. It was said that he had become famous overnight in battle, greatly pleasing the emperor. Not only did his official career flourish, but he might even be betrothed to a princess. His glory knew no bounds. He listened, utterly absorbed. He even forgot our agreement from last night, that he would return early today to take me to see a doctor. During our days on the run, we were poor. I didn't want to spend all the silver we'd painstakingly saved on a single doctor's visit. So I had said, "It's just a slight discomfort. Nothing to worry about." But Huo Yan was unusually firm. "It's just a doctor's visit. I told you before, even after leaving the general's mansion, I, Huo Yan, can still support you." He seemed determined to prove something. Or perhaps the tale of second young Master Huo had spread, how he sold his precious medicine for the princess, his spirit soaring with grandeur. I opened my mouth, staring at this face both familiar and strangely distant. Finally, I nodded. "I'll wait for my husband to return." The winter snow fell in heavy flakes. My thin winter clothes flapped in the wind, the cold piercing to the bone. Huo Yan hadn't returned. Braving the blizzard, I found him in the tavern, my dizzy, weak body struggling on. He was dead drunk. The tavern owner saw me. "Madam Pei, you've finally come. The tab can't be skipped, no credit today." I glanced at the ledger and gasped, how could it be so expensive? Before, it would have been no more than the price of one of my hairpins. But now, having long since left our families, this sum represented every penny Huo Yan and I had saved over so many years. Expensive? The tavern owner snorted derisively. Why come drink if it's too expensive? And you call yourself the elder brother of the second young master of the Huo family? Have you lost your mind? Penny pincher. What kind of person are you? I was speechless. Huo Yan suddenly stood up, slamming the owner against a pillar. You look down on me? Even you dare to look down on me? I am Huo Lin's elder brother. Who gave you the right to speak to her like that? She is my woman. Apologize. You're causing trouble. The tavern owner stammered in terror. I whispered, Huo Yan, stop. Huo Yan remained silent. A fist slammed into the tavern owner's face. Then a second punch, a third. Huo Yan! I couldn't bear it anymore. Just then, the tavern owner couldn't take it anymore. I'm sorry. Huo Yan's fist paused. I'm sorry, okay. I'm sorry. Let me go, I'll never do it again. He insisted, I'm Huo Lin's elder brother. The tavern owner nodded frantically, you're Huo Lin's elder brother, you are. He released his grip. The tavern owner collapsed to the ground, scrambling away in terror. But Huo Yan's own figure swayed. I stepped forward to support him. Huo Yan, let's go home. The next second, he shoved me away violently. The tables and chairs behind me slammed into my soft flesh, stinging painfully and making my vision darken in waves. But in my ears rang Huo Yan's drunken voice, why? Why? The one who should have become famous overnight was me. The one who should have risen through the ranks was me, even. He paused, then said, the one who should have married the princess was me. I froze completely, the pain in my body numbing. But he continued, I regret it. I regret it. The next day, when he woke, he saw me bustling about as usual. He shook his head, Alwan? Hearing this, I paused mid-motion, then turned back with my customary smile, you're awake. Breakfast will be ready soon. Just wait a bit longer. There's a hangover soup on the table. At the mention of wine, Huo Yan's expression stiffened. Suddenly tense, he asked me, I got drunk yesterday. I didn't say anything, did I? My expression remained unchanged. You were drunk and only knew how to sleep. What else could you say? He exhaled in relief, stepped forward, took my hand, pulled me into his embrace, and spoke the first words of affection in 3 months, Alwan, having you as my wife is truly wonderful. I just stared at the mound of earth in the courtyard, suddenly thinking of my father. He was only a minor official, yet in Jinling City he was renowned for his devotion to his wife. Everyone said Magistrate Pei was utterly devoted to his lady, with not a single concubine in his household. But only I knew he kept a beautiful mistress on the side. Every time he returned from seeing her, he'd feel a pang of guilt when he saw my mother's concerned face. So for days afterward, he would treat my mother with exceptional kindness. And I? Hearing his words, I merely forced a smile and said, I feel the same. Not true. Huo Yan thought only he harbored regrets. But this very morning, I heard of my younger sister's wedding. Among the miles of red bridal finery were 2 of Lady Pei's most treasured jade hair ornaments. Those were masterpieces, meticulously carved by artisans. Worth a fortune. Even a scrap of the material could have sustained Huo Yan and me in luxury for a long time. And one of those sets was meant for me. In that moment, I regretted it too. Fortunately, it wasn't too late. Because when I opened my eyes, I discovered both Huo Yan and I had been reborn. Reborn to the time before our first meeting at the flower viewing banquet. This time, he didn't come. When my younger sister asked if I wanted to sneak a peek at the men's banquet hall, I didn't go either. Throughout the entire banquet, I remained unusually quiet, cautious in every way. Even when the noble ladies sneered and mocked me, I didn't utter a single word in response. My younger sister, Pei Shu, was astonished. "Sister, why have you changed your temperament today? You must know that in the past, though I wasn't exactly hot-tempered, if I was truly bullied by a group of people, I wouldn't just swallow my anger." I merely smiled. A few words spoken in the heat of the moment only invite endless suffering. Just as in my past life, when I followed Huo Yan away from home for fleeting passion, I endured no end of torment. Now, as the daughter of a minor official, these noble ladies might merely look down on me with a few snide remarks. But if a real conflict arose, a single accusation from them would condemn me to endless hardship. Besides, I was no longer the sheltered Pei Wan of my youth. Having tasted suffering and stumbled many times, I finally understood. What's a few arguments? I want vast wealth and immense power. Is that so? My younger sister's cheeks puffed out. At 14, she knew nothing, her eyes brimming with curiosity. "Sister, isn't that the legendary young master Huo?" Not far away, on the archery range, Huo Yan swept through the competition with unstoppable momentum, radiating confidence. Countless noble ladies were utterly captivated. My little sister was among them, but alas, her voice was too loud and her status too low. The next moment, Du Qianer, the daughter of the Minister of Rights, knocked her to the ground with a cold sneer. You dare compete with me? How could you even dream of Master Huo?" "Exactly. Your father's just a minor official, there are plenty like him in Jinling. What are you flaunting yourself for? You're utterly beneath contempt. A person's worth lies in self-awareness." Seeing Miss Pei here, it seems she lacks that very quality. The noble ladies around her sneered and jeered. I didn't. My little sister was at a loss, tears welling in her bewildered eyes. "I didn't mean to compete with you." Little did she know Du Qianer's gaze turned icy as she raised her hand high. You dare call yourself my equal?" Her palm struck with considerable force. Had it landed, it might well have left a mark on my sister's face. For an unmarried girl, a blemish on her face would make future matchmaking an immense hardship. But Du Qianer was accustomed to tyranny. Or perhaps, leaving a mark on my sister's face was precisely her intention. Alas, her wish went unfulfilled. A firm hand seized her wrist. The expected pain never came. My sister opened her eyes, tears falling. "Big sister." "Miss Du," my sister was rude, "but this is the Prime Minister's wife's flower-viewing banquet. By any measure, it's not your place to discipline the guests." My voice remained steady. Du Qianer narrowed her eyes. "Are you threatening me? Who do you think you are? Your father is a lowly official, and your mother was nothing more than a merchant's daughter. Even if they personally pleaded for mercy today, they wouldn't be worthy of standing before the Du family." The commotion drew the attention of others nearby. Male guests murmured, "What's going on? Looks like another woman's causing trouble over young Master Huo. Which young lady doesn't gaze at young Master Huo with starry eyes? But if I'm not mistaken, that's Minister Du's daughter. That young miss has a terrible temper, mess with her and you'll regret it. The one beside her, I know her. Not from a prominent family, probably from the Pei household." At the mention of Pei, Huo Yan's figure stiffened. He instinctively looked over. There, he saw a familiar, straight-backed figure. Nearby, others spoke loudly. "Young Master Huo, she's suffering for your sake. Won't you step in and mediate? Don't let the young lady bear undeserved blame." I heard it too. The air hung heavy for a moment. Then came Huo Yan's emotionless voice. "A man approaching the ladies' section violates propriety." But in my past life, he had come himself, standing before me, defending me. In this instant, I knew for certain. Huo Yan had reincarnated too. And this time, he intended to sever our ill-fated ties, choosing a different path. I should be saddened, after all, a day as husband and wife in the past life meant 100 days of affection. But I only felt relief. Thankfully, he regretted it too. Then we could each go our separate ways, owing nothing to one another. I gathered my thoughts, lifted my gaze, and looked at Du Qian'er. If that is your wish, Miss Du, then Pei Wan has nothing more to say. But my younger sister, you cannot touch her. When had Du Qian'er ever been so humiliated? Especially before the esteemed eldest young master of the Huo family. Her face twisted in fury as she raised her other hand. Let's see if you dare talk back to me again. The slap came so fast it was almost impossible to react. Yet to a martial artist, it played out in slow motion. Huo Yan instinctively lunged forward. But images of our escape in my past life flashed through his mind, and he watched my retreating figure. Suddenly, he clenched his teeth. He stopped. I neither retreated nor yielded. I stared fixedly as the slap descended. At that very moment, Miss Du, a voice rang out, halting Du Qian'er's motion. Emerging from the crowd, she wore a radiant smile, her tone unusually warm. What's the amusing commotion? Why has everyone gathered here? It was none other than the hostess of this flower-viewing banquet, the Chancellor's wife. With the hostess present, if Du Qian'er had struck, it would have been a blatant disruption. She might scorn the Pei family, but she dared not offend the Chancellor's household. After all, the Du family's current prominence owed entirely to the Chancellor's patronage and promotion. Minister Du himself had been the Chancellor's former disciple. But before she could formulate a response, I had already replied with a smile. Indeed, it's quite amusing. Miss Du and I hit it off instantly, just having a playful moment. The dispute between the noble ladies was lightly dismissed as playful banter. Du Qian'er couldn't refute it and could only secretly shake off my hand. I remained unflappable, bowing to the Chancellor's wife. Pei Wan greets you, madam. The latter had witnessed everything, merely giving me a deep look, so that's how it is. You must be the child of Minister Pei? A fine child indeed. Thus, the flower-viewing banquet passed without incident. My younger sister was still in a daze as she climbed into the carriage. On the way back, I happened to see Du Qian'er shyly wringing her handkerchief as she faced Huo Yan. The next moment, she shoved the handkerchief into his hands and ran off without looking back. Huo Yan didn't dodge, but he didn't drop it either. He stood there, holding the handkerchief. How could the eldest young master of the Huo family possibly fancy someone like that? My little sister's rose-colored glasses shattered into pieces. She hadn't forgotten Du Qian'er's earlier attempt to strike her. I merely watched silently, my tone level as I said, whether he takes a fancy or not is none of our concern, Shu. We should mind our own business. My little sister, who'd always listened to me, nodded vigorously. I'll do whatever you say, sister. A spring breeze lifted the curtain. Huo Yan turned and caught sight of me. Strange. As if guilty, he abruptly hid the hand holding the handkerchief behind his back, seemingly wanting to explain. Awan, I'm not. What was there to explain? We were already strangers to each other. I didn't listen further, ordering the coachman, return to the manor. The curtain fell. Left behind, Huo Yan stood rooted to the spot, watching the receding carriage in bewilderment and shock. 3 months passed in a flash. Huo Yan was to go to war. In my past life, he and I were deeply in love. To be together, we both abandoned our status and lived as ordinary husband and wife. Thus, the one chosen for battle became the second young master of the Huo family. He regretted it. Thus it was no surprise that in this life, he volunteered himself, with the second young master of the Huo family as his deputy. Their departure was grand and imposing. Many noble ladies who admired him secretly bid him farewell from the rooftop of a Jinling tavern. Some said the eldest young master of the Huo family kept looking back, searching for someone, or perhaps waiting for someone. Could it be that among these women was the one he had long cherished in his heart? My younger sister recounted this as an amusing anecdote. Ever since the flower viewing banquet, my elder sister hasn't left the house. She spends all her time embroidering and reading. I hope she doesn't get too cooped up. Mother sighed, I wonder whose daughter is so blessed. She never imagined that girl could be one of her own daughters. On the contrary, with such a vast disparity in family standing, if it were true, it would be no blessing at all, rather, a calamity. After all, the Huo family would never permit their son to take the daughter of a minor official as his primary wife. I remained silent. Just then, a maid announced, the chancellor's wife has arrived. A high-ranking official's wife, coming here for matchmaking. It seemed unlikely. But what if the man being proposed was a sickly widower? That child is my husband's most promising disciple. He's just not in the best health. He married once, but his wife passed away shortly after the wedding. Now, his family doesn't want him to live alone and lonely. That's why I thought of Miss Pei. The chancellor's wife turned her gaze to me. At the flower viewing banquet that day, I noticed Miss Pei seemed particularly fond of you. But that sickly man didn't just lose his first wife immediately after marriage, he hadn't even completed the wedding rites. Now all of Jinling is abuzz with rumors. Not only is he frail, but he's also cursed to bring misfortune to his wives. They say it's about arranging a marriage, but really, it's just a matter of time before he passes. They're looking for someone to bring good fortune, aren't they? My mother understood the implication perfectly well. Anger welled up inside her, but she couldn't vent it openly due to the other party's status. She could only say, "Thank you for your kindness, madam. My daughter is still young, and I cherish her dearly. I'd like to keep her for another year or two." What do you mean keep her? The chancellor's wife has spoken, it's a kind gesture, a blessing for my daughter. My father countered almost immediately. Hearing the chancellor's wife had come personally, his eyes lit up. Having reached his current position in the bureaucracy, further advancement seemed unlikely. But if he could attach himself to the chancellor's household, well, that was another matter entirely. My mother, ever the wise woman by his side, paled at this and tried to intervene. Husband. The chancellor's wife merely smiled without comment, glancing at her before taking a sip of tea and saying softly, "My dears, why not ask Miss Pei herself if she is willing?" At these words, all eyes turned to me. I asked only, does the family possess wealth? Fortunes beyond measure, enough for Miss Pei to live in comfort for 10 lifetimes. Do they hold influence? Every household in Jinling owes them respect. She waited for me to inquire about looks, virtue, or physique. But I had asked all I needed. I said, then I am willing to marry. This time, even the chancellor's wife was taken aback. She'd expected me to hesitate at least. After all, this was a lifelong commitment, and the man was a sickly wife killer. But I didn't care. In my previous life, witnessing my mother and father's hollow pretense of happiness had shown me it wasn't worth it. So I decided to live differently. I faked my death with Huo Yan and fled, becoming an ordinary couple. But I wasn't happy then either. Even so, I refused to choose. What is love and affection? Nothing but illusion, it can't put food on the table. What can feed us is silver and power. Never mind if he's a sickly wife killer, even if he were dead, I'd still marry him. My final question, when is the wedding? The chancellor's wife, delighted at such a swift decision, hurriedly replied, the 8th day of the 8th month, an auspicious day. That day truly was auspicious. Not only for the wedding. It was also the day Huo Yan returned in triumph. He had indeed achieved a great victory, been named the ever-victorious general, and returned to the capital in glorious triumph. On his way, he saw lively celebrations lining the streets. Some family must have been celebrating a joyous occasion. His heart couldn't help but stir. After all, in my previous life, we had left under false pretenses of death, carrying little silver. Our wedding was nothing more than a simple red silk ribbon. I didn't even have a wedding gown, wearing only a red flower in my hair. Back then, he was filled with remorse. Wait a little longer, Ah Wan. Wait a little longer. Once I've established myself, I'll give you a grand wedding. But in the end, he never fulfilled that promise. He admitted he truly regretted it afterward. Having grown accustomed to a life of luxury, he now faced a life of plain food and no achievements. He regretted it every single moment. So when he heard his second brother had been promoted again, he got completely drunk. In that drunken haze, he thought, if only he could do it all over again. If only he could choose differently. And so, when he opened his eyes once more, he found himself back at the very beginning. Seeing me, his first instinct was to flee. It should have been that way, strangers who never met, lives that never intersected. But why, when he took Du Qian'er's handkerchief and saw Pei Wan's face reflected in it, did he feel such panic and guilt? Huo Yan never understood. Until these days of constant warfare, when his men noticed his unease and asked. He concealed some of it, sharing his confusion. His men understood immediately, replying lightly, "What's so hard about it? Make that woman your concubine, and marry someone of equal standing as your wife." Simple. But how could she be a concubine? Huo Yan was stunned, blurting out instinctively. Why not? For the daughter of a minor official to become a general's concubine is a blessing for 8 lifetimes. She should be overjoyed. Does she not know good fortune when she sees it? His subordinate stated it as if it were self-evident. With your talents, General, if she truly understands you and loves you, she will naturally be magnanimous and support your decision. Huo Yan. It dawned on him. Right. He still loved Pei Wan after all. In his previous life, he and Pei Wan had faked their deaths to leave precisely because his family wouldn't accept her as his legitimate wife. Now, since he refused to give her up, why not let her be his concubine? He wouldn't mistreat her anyway, it was merely the title of concubine. Pei Wan loved him so deeply, she wouldn't mind. With this realization, Huo Yan returned in high spirits. Coincidentally encountering a wedding procession, he cheerfully inquired, "Whose wedding is this today?" Others, the Pei family. The second Miss Pei? Why isn't the eldest sister, Pei Wan, here to see her off? Pei Wan is the bride. Clang. On the streets of Jinling, everyone witnessed the peerless, ever-victorious general suddenly lose his composure, his long sword slipping from his grasp. His face twisted with fury. Whoever had angered him remained unknown. Of course, he wasn't the only one displeased. At the Ministry of Rights residence, the mother-in-law pointed at me and instructed Du Qian'er, call her sister-in-law. What kind of sister-in-law is this? I refuse to be anyone's younger sister-in-law. Du Qian'er stomped her foot in anger and turned to run away. The scene fell silent for a moment. No one had expected the second Miss Du to be so willful. Beneath the red veil, I couldn't see the expressions of the others, but my mother-in-law merely gave an awkward laugh and said lightly, "Look at this child. She's been spoiled since childhood. Seeing her eldest brother marry, she's probably jealous, afraid he won't favor her anymore." With just a few words, it was dismissed. Even if I were the dumbest person alive, I knew this was my mother-in-law giving me a warning shot on my very first day in the family. And it wasn't just her. My father-in-law stood silently by, while my younger brother-in-law was still drinking at the tavern, even declaring, "A sickly woman getting married? Bad luck. I'm not going." As for my husband, he was a cocky rooster. Du Rollin, the eldest son of Minister Du, had been hailed as a child prodigy since his youth. If Minister Du was the old chancellor's most favored disciple, then this child was the one Minister Du brought to the old chancellor, who raised him with his own hands. Alas, heaven envies talent. At 10 years old, he fell into the water one day and never fully recovered. The imperial physicians spoke in cryptic terms, but their consensus was clear: this eldest son of the Du family clearly bore the mark of a short life. From then on, he naturally fell out of favor at home. Even his first marriage was merely a face-saving arrangement by the Du family, pairing him with a girl who was also on the brink of death. The second son of the Du family once sneered, "A sickly one paired with another sickly one, how perfect for them to die young together." Yet the girl passed away before she could complete the wedding rites. Thus, the eldest son of the Du family became yet another laughingstock. Only the old chancellor and his wife remembered him, which is how this marriage came about. This explains why my mother resisted so fiercely when the chancellor's wife first proposed the match. Our family may not be noble, but we're not so desperate we'd sell our daughter for wealth. Pei Wan, why did you agree to this marriage? As soon as the chancellor's wife left, my mother pulled me close and asked urgently. Indeed, our family's wealth came not from my father, but from my mother. She was born the daughter of a wealthy merchant. Yet in the hierarchy of scholars, farmers, artisans, and merchants, with merchants at the bottom, even immense wealth made her family looked down upon by the aristocratic clans. Thus, she married my father, a minor official. I didn't regret it, but I explained carefully, "Mother, I must marry someone eventually. Given that, why not choose the one who offers me the highest status? Whether this man is good or not, no one knows. But whether he is wealthy and powerful is plain to see. Even if the eldest Du son is a sickly weakling, disregarded by his own family, the old chancellor and his wife care deeply for him." Just like earlier, after I agreed to the match, the chancellor's wife personally assured me, "My child, rest assured. Should you suffer any injustice after marrying into that family, come to me. I will stand by your side." Clearly, given my status, this was the best match I could hope for. And besides, father has already agreed, hasn't he? At the mention of my father, my mother's face stiffened, her expression thick with resentment and fury. All these years, he kept a mistress hidden from me, fathering a bastard child. I could have pretended not to know, as long as it didn't come to my attention. But I never imagined, 100 days of marital bond, that he would sell his own daughter for his political ambitions. She had learned of my father's mistress 3 years ago, but by then it was too late. Not only had the mistress been with him for years, she'd also borne him a son. Divorce was now utterly impossible. Never mind that my father's greatest reputation was loving his wife dearly, he'd never let that truth be exposed. And as for the mistress and child? My mother would never permit it. Divorce me? Leave the entire estate to that adulterous couple and their bastard? They can dream on. As long as I live, they'll never set foot in this house. So you see. Even my mother, who prided herself on mastering her husband, couldn't fathom his true heart. In my past life, I chose a different path, yet still found no happiness. So what's there left to agonize over? Whether the eldest son of the Du family is worthy or not, whether the Du family is honorable or not, I care not. As long as marrying into the Du family grants me the status of Lady Du, ensuring I'm never without food or clothing and never treated as a doormat, that's the tangible benefit I can hold on to. So mother, I'm willing to marry. Now that I'm the new bride, my sister-in-law gives me the cold shoulder, my mother-in-law and father-in-law give me a taste of their power, and my younger brother-in-law shows me no respect whatsoever. My husband even used a rooster as a substitute. They thought I'd be mortified and filled with shame. Little do they know that compared to my previous life, endless fields to till, silkworms to raise, handkerchiefs to embroider, and Huo Yan to serve, this is utterly insignificant. Love and affection? Just till 2 acres of land and you'll learn your place. So when my mother-in-law spoke thus, I merely replied softly, "Chianer meant no offense. Besides, Awan has a younger sister too." Seeing Chianer's temperament so similar to my own, Awan seems quite pleased. False. My younger sister was the most obedient and sensible. She even wept bitterly when sending me off to marriage. But others overheard my reply and began whispering among themselves. The minister's household had gained a sensible, considerate daughter-in-law, while this second young miss was so arrogant, truly not to be commended. Mother-in-law seemed taken aback by this outcome. A flicker passed through her eyes, and the smile faded from her lips. She said coldly, "If that is the case, then let us proceed with the ceremony. Since Roalyn is frail, and my daughter-in-law is so sensible, substituting something else should surely not matter." Of course it wouldn't matter to me. I was marrying the status of Lady Dew, not her son. Forget a chicken, even if it were a dog, I'd still perform this ceremony. I knelt calmly as the officiant's voice boomed, "First bow to heaven and earth." The rooster beside me flapped its wings. "Second bow to your parents." Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Husband and wife face each other, wait! Someone burst from the crowd, shouting loudly. The ceremony halted. All I could see was the red cloth before me, unaware of the situation. Yet that voice was all too familiar. My hands clenched as I stood up, straining to see in that direction. General Huo? Others were equally astonished. The second son of the Huo family led troops into battle and returned victorious. The eldest son was even honored as the ever-victorious general. He just returned today, basking in glory. Why would he suddenly appear here? Could it be the Dew family invited him? But the Dew family held no regard for the son and daughter-in-law, let alone this marriage. How could they have invited him? But given General Huo Yan's current prestige, his in-laws naturally greeted him with smiles. "Honored General Huo, why didn't the servants announce your arrival sooner?" "Please sit, General. Come drink a cup of celebratory wine?" Yet Huo Yan was clearly overcome by passion. Without a moment's thought, he snapped harshly, "I did not come to drink celebratory wine." His harsh tone deeply offended his mother and father-in-law. Their expressions darkened noticeably. Meanwhile, Huo Yan, dusty from travel, radiating fury, still clad in his armor, stared fixedly, intensely at me before the assembled crowd. Everyone followed his gaze. This was entirely unexpected. We had clearly agreed beforehand that in this new life, we would have nothing to do with each other and go our separate ways. Why did Huo Yan burst in during my wedding ceremony and stare at me like this in front of everyone? Forget what others might think. If word got out, how could I possibly face the Dew family? I steadied myself, yet instinctively took a step back. The next instant, a hand steadied my waist, carrying a faint, bitter medicinal scent. Startled, I turned my head. Beneath the red veil, I could only make out the figure clad in wedding robes. A voice, cool and faint, spoke, "General Huo, you must be here for my younger sister?" However, this is the moment of my wedding ceremony with my new bride. Why not wait for the servants to announce your arrival? Would the general care to sit and share a cup of celebratory wine? Though Huo Yan and Du Qian'er's marriage hadn't been publicly announced, both families had already accepted it. Among Jinling's prominent clans, this was common knowledge. Speaking thus now was technically accurate. At least it provided Huo Yan with the best possible excuse. Yet when Huo Yan saw Du Roalyn's arm wrapped around my waist, his anger flared even more. "I did not come, husband." I suddenly called out, my body swaying slightly as I half collapsed into the arms of the person beside me, appearing somewhat exhausted. The person stiffened, paused for a second, then steadied me. Such behavior from newlyweds seemed deeply affectionate. It was like a bucket of cold water, dousing Huo Yan completely. "Roalyn?" Seeing her eldest son, the mother-in-law didn't seem particularly pleased, instead appearing distant. "Why are you here? Weren't you ill?" The man holding me coughed twice, showing no warmth toward his mother. He replied indifferently, "This is the day my son marries. Husband and wife are one. Even if I have only a breath left, I must accompany my daughter-in-law to complete the ceremony." With that, he lifted his gaze behind Huo Yan. "My younger sister has arrived." As soon as the words fell, Du Qian'er's figure appeared. Gone was the loathing she'd shown me earlier. Instead, her face was filled with delight. "General, why have you come?" Huo Yan, who had been overcome by a surge of emotion, finally snapped back to reality. He slowly turned to face the bashful Duchenne. His back was drenched in cold sweat. He had just realized what he had nearly done. Now that he had achieved success and fame, he was to marry the daughter of the Minister of Revenue, a match made in heaven. If he had truly caused a scene at the wedding today in a fit of passion, everything would have been ruined. The marriage would be called off, his father would be disappointed, censors would impeach him. He would revert to being the good-for-nothing Huo Yan of his past life, forever overshadowed by his second brother's brilliance. All because of one Pei Wan. Was it worth it? Huo Yan gave his answer, each word painfully deliberate. "I came for Miss Du." Arriving so abruptly without a wedding gift, I deeply apologized to Mr. Du and Mrs. Du. My apologies. The answer was, not worth it. After this incident, the rooster used to humiliate me was removed. At the other end of the red silk ribbon, someone now held it alongside me. Huo Yan sat among the male guests, watching the scene. Finally, the couple bows to each other. In a daze, he recalled the shy girl from his past life, marrying him without a splendid wedding gown, her hair adorned only with red flowers. He vowed to give her the grandest wedding. His voice boomed, his eyes reddening. "Enter the bridal chamber." Thus, the wedding passed without major incident. After the guests dispersed, Du Roland entered the bridal chamber and dismissed the servants. Red candles flickered in the silent room. He lifted my red veil. Before my eyes appeared a handsome, pale face. Even in his wedding attire, he seemed devoid of vitality. The rumors were true. The eldest son of the Du family was indeed a sickly man. A face marked for an early grave. I blinked. But he had already lowered the veil expressionlessly and spoken, "I care not for today's events, nor shall I pursue them further. After all, you did not marry me of your own free will. You miscalculated. My frail body cannot give you what you desire, nor would I wish to. Moreover, I am unwelcome in this household. Your fate here will mirror mine. Therefore, if you remain content to stay in the East Wing, I can ensure your safety. But should you harbor extravagant ambitions or seek to climb higher, do not blame me for the consequences." His eyes brimmed with weariness, not for me, but for this world. He seemed to have given up entirely. "Let it be. After I die, I'll grant you a divorce and a sum of money. You needn't mourn me, and don't bother me." With that, he turned and walked toward the door without another glance. I called out, "Where are you going, my lord?" His footsteps halted. He turned to look at me, his brow furrowed. Clearly, he deeply disliked being called my lord, yet he couldn't refute it. After all, we had exchanged vows, he was indeed my husband. Thus, he could only say, "The study." He had no intention of sharing a bed with me. But just as he started to leave, I yanked him back. How could he possibly leave? On our wedding night, if the groom walked out, I'd become a laughingstock tomorrow. That would jeopardize my status and position. I couldn't allow it. His health was already poor, and before he could react, I pulled him onto the bed. Coughing incessantly, he was both shocked and furious. "What are you doing?" Naturally, we consummate our marriage. The palanquin has been lowered, the ancestral hall paid respects. How could my husband claim I wed unwillingly? He froze, then gave a self-mocking chuckle. With this sickly frame, who would willingly marry me? I would. Without hesitation, I shed my hairpins and robes under his stunned gaze. A newlywed, wealthy, deceased husband, such a blessing suited my current self perfectly. Therefore, I forcibly undid the sash of the Du family's frail, aloof eldest son and pressed my lips to his. "Husband, let us consummate our marriage." The next morning, hearing the Du household servants knocking at the door as they had been waiting, I rose from bed feeling refreshed and alert. The door swung open. The matron beside my mother-in-law stared wide-eyed, straining to see inside. The next moment, she dropped the basin she held, gasped, and rushed toward the bedside. "Young master." Du Rollin lay swathed in blankets, his neck mottled with crimson marks, his face grim, looking every bit the defiled maiden. Ignoring the matron's stunned gaze, he gritted his teeth. "Base conduct. An affront to propriety. Unworthy of a gentleman. Pei Wan, you cough cough." The servants gathered in a flustered circle. I smoothed my collar. "Nonsense. I am a woman, not a petty villain, nor a gentleman. What's wrong with consummating my marriage with my own husband on our wedding night? It's only natural." Du Rollin had had enough. She flung the handkerchief from the bed into the matron's arms and snapped, "Get out." The matron caught sight of the crimson stain on the handkerchief and blurted out the truth. "You too, actually. After all, she'd been sent by the mother-in-law to witness the spectacle." With Du Rollin being a sickly weakling in me, a daughter-in-law she disliked, there was plenty of embarrassment to go around. But who could have imagined? The nurse glanced at me, then at Du Rollin's slightly pale complexion and the distinct crimson marks on his fair neck. Du Rollin. Veins bulged on Du Rollin's forehead. "Get out. Now." The group scrambled out in a fluster. After the Du family's eldest son fell ill from drowning, he plummeted from the clouds into the mud, his temperament completely transformed. He often secluded himself in the courtyard, loathing the sight of outsiders. Even his personal hygiene was handled entirely by himself. Servants who strayed into his quarters were inevitably scolded and red-faced. They all knew this. True, the young master had become the unwanted child his parents disliked, but with the old chancellor present, the minister Du and his wife, however displeased, would still have to indulge and appease him. The crowd dispersed. Du Rollin angrily flung off the quilt. Yet his hand reaching for his robes trembled slightly. The next moment, a hand naturally picked them up and held them before him. He lifted his gaze, glaring fiercely at me. "I don't need your charity. Get lost." He snatched his clothes back forcefully, but by the time he'd put on his undergarments, his forehead was already covered in cold sweat. I stood motionless, watching every moment without blinking. His pride and dignity clashed, making his movements increasingly clumsy. After several failed attempts, he slammed his fist into the quilt. Resigned to despair, he collapsed onto the bed, covering his eyes with the back of his hand. His breaths, deep and shallow, echoed distinctly in the quiet room. I said nothing, merely deftly dressing him. He muttered, "Pei Wan, you claimed marrying me was your choice. But seeing me now, this useless wreck, don't you find your own lies laughable?" Confused, I replied, "How am I useless? Last night was perfectly fine." Mentioning last night was a mistake. Du Rollin, who had just slumped in defeat, suddenly snapped awake and glared at me. You were so reckless. You forced me. I will never forgive you. Blah blah blah, what's all this about?" I bit his lip, smugly thinking, well, you'll have plenty of days to not forgive me in the future. I certainly didn't want my days ahead to be bland and uneventful. He clearly understood the implication in my words, his face flushing bright red in disbelief. "Shameless. How strange, what's there to be ashamed of after consummating the marriage? What hadn't we seen of each other last night?" Du Rollin was stubborn. Believing his days were numbered, he cared about nothing. His parents and family felt the same. So when he accompanied me to pay respects to his parents, they showed me no courtesy. My father-in-law started it. "Rollin is frail. Now that you've married into this family, you must serve him diligently and wholeheartedly." Du Rollin sneered coldly. "I'm sick, not crippled. What's there to serve?" My mother-in-law added, "Best you bear us a first grandson. Don't turn out to be a hen that can't lay eggs, making us a laughingstock." Du Rollin retorted, "If I can't bear children, I won't make another woman take the blame." Mother speaks so elegantly, but if I actually give birth to a male heir before Ruoting, will you still be laughing then? Next, Du Qian'er erupted in indignation. What do you mean by that, brother? How dare you speak to father and mother like that? And you! She pointed at me accusingly. You can't even control your own husband, what good are you? I opened my mouth to speak, but the person beside me sneered. Is this how you address your elder brother and sister-in-law? Disrespecting elders and shouting, what use are you? Bang! Ruoting, returning tipsy from a drunken revelry at the tavern, slammed his fist on the table and roared, Du Ruolin, don't think being a sickly invalid entitles you to everyone's indulgence. Talking back to your parents, making your little sister cry, I'll teach you a lesson today. Du Ruolin shot him a dismissive glance, sneering with contempt, and who do you think you are? Who gave you the right to point fingers at me? Ruolin! The mother-in-law, who had remained unmoved by Du Ruolin's previous confrontations, instantly turned pale when he mentioned her youngest son. She scolded, how dare you speak to your brother like that? This household will depend entirely on your brother in the future. She assumed it was only natural, Du Ruolin would pass away sooner or later, and the Du family would naturally fall to Du Ruoting. Not just you, but even this new bride of yours. Should anything happen to you, won't your brother have to care for his widowed sister-in-law? Du Ruoting shouted in response, I won't do it. The entire Du family is mine. I refuse to support a sickly invalid and a widow. Such blunt words weren't the first time he'd spoken them. No wonder Du Ruolin had been so unkind to them, a stark contrast to how reasonable he'd been when he saw me last night. I smiled, resting my hand on Du Ruolin's forearm and speaking before he could, what manner of words are these from a younger brother? Though my husband is frail, he is not destined to die young. To curse your own elder brother thus, should word of this reach the ears of those in power, it may well cause you hardship in your future career. Du Qian'er disliked me the most. Seeing me speak, she prepared to retort, but I turned my gaze to her instead. My dear sister-in-law is soon to be married. Similarly, if word spreads that you've spoken back to your elder brother, wouldn't that make even a promising marriage proposal seem uncertain? What nonsense are you spouting? Brother Huo would never reject me. At the mention of marriage, Du Qian'er stomped her foot in fury. As if Huo Yan's decisions had anything to do with me. I lifted my gaze to meet my in-laws. My husband's words were ill-chosen, born of long-held frustration rather than malice. I offer my sincere apologies to you, father and mother. However, I shifted my tone and spoke slowly. As we all know, our dynasty has always followed the ironclad rule of succession through the eldest legitimate son. Should he pass away, the eldest legitimate grandson inherits. Only when both are absent does the responsibility fall to the second son. Forgive my frankness, mother-in-law, but your earlier words were quite inappropriate. They absolutely must not be repeated. Wouldn't you agree, father-in-law? The path to officialdom is treacherous. To reach this position requires utmost caution and vigilance. One careless misstep, a political rival's accusation, and troubles beyond measure would follow, troubles impossible to shake off. My father-in-law understood my meaning perfectly, narrowing his eyes at me for 2 seconds. My expression remained impassive, as if I'd said nothing, looking at them innocently. My mother-in-law couldn't hold back, pointing at me, you're right. Father-in-law finally spoke, his tone cold. Though we are at home now, each of you must still watch your words and actions, especially you. He pointed at Du Qian'er and Du Ruoting. One more slip of the tongue, and confinement to your quarters is inevitable. Yet he didn't even glance at Du Ruolin or me before leaving. As he passed, he remarked indifferently, as for you two? Mind your own business. As the head of the household and a man of high standing, he couldn't stand being manipulated or threatened. Du Ruolin, the eldest son, was disobedient. He could tolerate his backtalk and defiance. But for me, a newlywed just entering the household, to be disobedient too. That would be sheer ingratitude. But, what did that have to do with me? Letting them have their way wouldn't bring me silver or power. On the contrary, it would only bring endless humiliation. So why the hell should I put up with it? I hadn't forgotten why I married into this family. Fortunately, the Chancellor's wife hadn't forgotten either. The very next day, she personally visited the Du residence. First, she inspected Du Ruolin to ensure he was unharmed. He even seemed livelier than before. Only then did she take my hand and smile. "I knew you were a good child. You strike me as exceptionally likable." Finally, she addressed my mother-in-law, Yueling. "Now that the eldest son is married and the bride has entered the household, it's high time you taught her the ways of managing the inner quarters." Her words were subtle, yet anyone with eyes could see their meaning. Before a maiden leaves her family home, she is taught the duties of managing household affairs. How could one possibly wait until arriving at her husband's home for her mother-in-law to instruct her? The Chancellor's wife's words were a subtle admonishment to the mother-in-law: show no favoritism. The authority to manage the household should be granted when due. The mother-in-law's smile felt forced upon hearing this. She shot me a heavy, lingering glance. The old Chancellor had a son stationed far away in the southwest, holding an important position. Naturally, the couple missed him dearly. To be perfectly frank, the old Chancellor's care for the Du family stemmed not from Minister Du as his protégé, but from Du Ruolin, a child he had watched grow up, who was to him like a grandson. This was especially evident after Du Ruolin fell ill from drowning. So much so that when Du Ruolin was deliberately neglected by his parents, the Chancellor's wife intervened. "If Ruolin truly bears the mark of a short life, he is still your child. How can you be so short-sighted? Favoring the younger son while neglecting him?" The mother-in-law's reply was seamless. "Yueling, you're mistaken. This child eats and wears the same as Ruoding. When have my husband and I ever neglected him?" The Chancellor's wife was left speechless. True, their food and clothing were identical, but certain unseen things were not. Behind closed doors, the mother-in-law would fret. His birth was already a hardship. We thought he'd be a prodigy, yet in just a few years he's become a sickly weakling. He only gets the Chancellor's pity for his talent. Otherwise, that self-destructive attitude of his, it's unbearable to watch. She sneered coldly. "And you call me biased? With the eldest son useless, if I don't properly guide the second son, am I supposed to live out my days tending to a corpse?" It was precisely her excessive favoritism that brought the Chancellor's wife here today. This was the promise she made when arranging our marriage, a small act of protection for Du Ruolin. But regardless of the reason, I've seized control of the household. In the courtyard, watching me tally accounts with the abacus, Du Ruolin's mocking smile touched his lips. "This must be your true purpose for marrying in, right?" My fingers paused. I looked up innocently. "What are you saying, husband?" "I don't understand." But inside, I felt a tingle of satisfaction. The Du family was truly wealthy. Now, even if those who looked down on me in their hearts still did so, they had to be respectful on the surface. As for my mother-in-law, she never stopped trying to trip me up. But don't forget, my mother was the daughter of a wealthy merchant. When it came to managing accounts, who could possibly outmaneuver me? Time and again, she was outmaneuvered by me. The only one I couldn't directly deal with was that little brother-in-law, Du Ruoding. Originally, both Du Qianer and he disliked me intensely. But Du Qianer's expenses were limited to buying jewelry and clothes. Du Ruoding, however, was a different story. He'd spend hundreds of taels on a whim, playing polo one day, dining at fancy restaurants the next. Spoiled rotten by his mother, he had no scruples. As a newcomer to the family, I couldn't interfere too much. So most of the time, he got his way. But that was all. I finally achieved my wish. I didn't gain my husband's affection, but I secured tangible silver and power. Du Ruolin truly lived up to his reputation as a child prodigy. His body was injured, not his mind. He saw everything clearly, but simply grew weary of exposing it. Now he sat beside me, offering a small revenge for how I'd forced him to submit on our wedding night. "Enjoy your happiness now. In 3 or 5 years, this pleasure will fade. Me, why 3 or 5 years? A wicked smile curved across Du Roland's pale, handsome face, because in 3 or 5 years, I'll die of illness. You have no heir. My mother will surely rush to hand over the entire estate to her youngest son. Otherwise, why do you think she handed over the household reins to you so readily? Clatter. An abacus bead fell to the floor. Du Roland coughed again, his voice faint, perhaps. It won't even take 3 or 5 years. My eyes darted about, and I sprang to my feet. Du Roland thought I would treat him with utmost care, tending to him with the utmost caution. At the very least, not like before, constantly forcing him to comply by exploiting his frailty. In truth, he was half right. I did treat him better, at least securing numerous physicians for him. But his ailment had taken root long ago, even the imperial physicians were powerless. Instead, Du Roland would have to endure several more bowls of medicine. But beyond that, nothing changed. I still forced him to do things he didn't want to do, finished quickly, dressed him efficiently, and rose refreshed to begin another day of managing accounts and making money. Everything seemed exactly the same. I swiftly took control of all affairs in the Du household's inner quarters. Du Roland continued going out daily with his friends. When asked why he wasn't preparing for the imperial examinations, he waved it off dismissively. With my talents, what exam could I possibly fail? Even if I didn't pass, I still have my father. I'd live well regardless, and don't forget, the Du family will be mine someday. Meanwhile, Du Qian'er was busy courting Huo Yan. Several times, I'd stumble upon the two of them in the back courtyard. Huo Yan always seemed to want to say something when he saw me, but Du Qian'er's presence always silenced him. He'd finally fulfilled his lifelong ambition. This time around, he'd shed his impulsiveness and had the Huo family's backing, so everything was going smoothly. Later, when he formed an alliance with the Du family through marriage, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. I had no particular thoughts on the matter, but I did ask Du Qian'er, "Are you really going to marry Huo Yan?" Du Qian'er looked at me warily. "Why not? You just can't stand seeing me marry well, can you? Don't think I don't know, Pei Shu wants to steal my husband. Who knows if you, as my sister, might help her sabotage me. Pei Wan, let me tell you this, stop scheming against me. If mother finds out, you'll be in for it." She clamored for a generous dowry. As the one managing the accounts, I couldn't be stingy. I sighed and said no more. As for my mother-in-law, she remained surprisingly quiet. At least, we could still maintain a superficial calm. Du Roland was at a loss. We truly stumbled through half a year like this. They say a day as husband and wife brings 100 days of affection. Aside from forcing him to consummate our marriage every fortnight, I treated him quite well otherwise, at least I thoughtfully dressed him. Even his medicines were carefully selected. Once, he coughed up blood. That was the first time I saw Du Roland in the throes of his illness, pale as death, his breath faint as a thread. He seemed ready to breathe his last at any moment. Panicked, I summoned countless physicians. Yet as he watched my frantic efforts, he simply said, "Pei Wan, let it go." I froze, turning back. Blood still streaked his lips as he gazed at me with a rare, self-mocking smile. "Let it all go. Remember what I said before. Cough cough, after I die, in the small box on the first shelf of my study, you'll find a letter of divorce and enough silver to secure your life. Don't mourn me. If you wish to remarry, do so. And don't fight with my mother. Without me, you'll be the only outsider left in this household. You won't prevail, so..." Cough cough. He drew a deep breath. "Take the silver. Go." They say a dying man's words are sincere, yet even at this moment, Du Roland and I, this shallow-fated pair, still had to exchange bitter words. But I didn't. I lunged forward, grabbed his collar, and spoke each word clearly under his startled gaze. "Don't you dare die. Du Roland, I won't let you die. Not now, at least. I should be cold-hearted and ruthless. If he died, I wouldn't have time to establish myself, I'd lose. Just as he said, in my current state, I couldn't stand up to his mother. I brought him countless doctors, but he remained unconscious. Everyone said there was no hope left. The Du household had already begun preparing his funeral. I became the pitiful new bride in others' eyes, widowed after only half a year of marriage. Even the old chancellor and his wife came to take one last look, shook their heads, and left. My mother brought my younger sister to see me. She said my sister had found a good family, they'd marry her off once an auspicious date was chosen. She said she was living comfortably, and father was in good health. She said, Alwan, if it ever comes to that, come home. She hesitated, holding back some words she couldn't bring herself to say. My little sister's eyes welled up, wanting to speak, but mother silenced her. Still, I sensed it. I grabbed her hand. Mother, is everything truly fine at home? My mother squeezed back, her tone firm. Silly girl, with your mother here, what could possibly go wrong? Don't forget, I've made it this far, I'm no pushover. So as long as I'm here, everything will be fine. Everyone left. Only Du Rulin remained, lying unconscious on the bed after months of slumber. Her breath was faint, barely audible. A gust of wind swept through. A white dove landed beside my hand, a note tied to its leg. I lifted my gaze, untied it, and my expression turned cold upon reading its contents. I raised my hand, holding it over the candle flame, watching intently until the words say yes, and I'll help you fake your death to escape burn to ashes. Bang! At that very moment, the door swung open. The matron beside my mother-in-law looked down haughtily. Madam, your guests are here. The fragile calm I'd struggled to maintain shattered. No sooner had I entered the main hall than a teacup came hurtling down, its contents splashing across my robes. Then came my mother-in-law's sharp command, how dare you stand? Kneel at once. I offered no protest, kneeling obediently. Lifting my head, I saw the entire household assembled. Father-in-law sat in the seat of honor, Du Chinner gloating with schadenfreude, mother-in-law radiating authority without raising her voice. Du Ruoding chimed in, yes. It's all her fault. She should kneel. I asked honestly, may I ask what I've done to anger you both so? You still have the nerve to ask. My mother-in-law sneered coldly. My father-in-law spoke up, I ask you, you manage the household accounts. When Ruoding asked you for silver, did you give it to him? I answered truthfully, what my younger brother-in-law requested, I naturally gave. But did you know what he spent it on? His tone shifted abruptly. Only then did I notice Du Ruoding's face was clearly bruised and battered. I was puzzled, as his sister-in-law, how could I dare pry into my younger brother-in-law's private affairs? True, for ordinary monthly allowances, it would be inappropriate to pry. But this time you gave him 10,000 silver coins. Shouldn't you have asked? Father-in-law's eyes widened in fury. Do you know he gambled away every coin you handed him? An elder sister-in-law is like a mother. I don't know how you charmed the chancellor's wife into meddling in our family affairs, even taking away my authority to manage the household. My mother-in-law seemed bitterly disappointed, but I trusted the chancellor's wife, trusted you. That's why after handing it over, I didn't ask any questions, to avoid gossip about me favoring my youngest son. I never imagined you'd be so incompetent. Failing to manage the accounts is one thing, but now you've gotten Ruoding hooked on gambling. How can the Du family possibly tolerate you? I told you so. What else could the daughter of a merchant woman know besides dirty tricks? Father and mother insisted on indulging her, and now look at the mess she's caused. Du Chinner added fuel to the fire, making it sound as if the Du family had treated me with utmost kindness. After speaking, she turned to me with a look of schadenfreude. Sister-in-law, my eldest brother is about to die. Everyone knows father has only this youngest son left. He's destined to carry the family's future. Even if you're heartless, you shouldn't have led my brother astray like this. The imperial examinations are just around the corner. At the mention of the imperial exams, father-in-law's face darkened further. He shot Du Ruoting a vicious glare. You good for nothing. Du Ruoting wasn't about to admit fault. Without hesitation, he pointed at me. Father, this isn't my fault. It's all hers. I gave her whatever she wanted. I've heard this is called flattery to ruin someone. It's all dirty tricks used in big houses to fight over inheritance. Clearly she covets the inheritance, that's why she deliberately got me hooked on gambling. Every word sealed my fate. Finally, my mother-in-law delivered the coup de grace. Truly, not a single one of you is fit to show your face in public. Just yesterday, the concubine of that minor official, her father's mistress, came knocking at our door. And she brought along a son nearly 8 years old. What do you mean by that, mother-in-law? It dawned on me, and my expression finally shifted. She curled her lips, pleased with my reaction. You didn't know? Your mother is so jealous she can't stand anyone else. Your father took a mistress, and yesterday she came looking for trouble. Now all of Jinling is in an uproar. If you ask me, your moral failings run in the family. Now that I think about it, maybe Ruolin's unconsciousness is your doing too. Who knows if you harbor resentment over marrying a sickly man? I protested. I've never resented him, nor harmed my husband in the slightest. If Ruolin never wakes, who can say? My mother-in-law chuckled softly. With such venom in your heart, my family can no longer tolerate you. Here is your divorce decree. Return wherever you came from. But, I looked at them and asked, my husband hasn't awakened. Where was this divorce decree written? Naturally, I wrote it on my brother's behalf. Du Ruoting desperately wanted someone else to take the blame. He pulled a piece of paper from his waist and tossed it at my feet. Get out. Get out! How amusing. Given Du Ruolin's loathing for this man, if he knew Du Ruoting had written his divorce papers for him, who knows how furious he'd be. Fortunately, everyone soon found out. Behind me, a hoarse, deep voice sounded, For me? How did you die in my place? The crowd looked around in shock. Ruolin. Du Ruolin was being supported by others. His already pale face looked even worse due to his terrible mood. He walked behind me. What? Am I not dead? Are you all so upset? How could that be? His mother stammered. He didn't look at his biased mother, only at me with a hint of guilt. I came too late. I let you suffer. I didn't move. He called out, Pei Wan? When he looked again, he froze. Because he met my eyes, rimmed with red. It's fine. As long as my husband is well, Awan feels no wrong. His lips trembled slightly, as if deeply moved. But I, tears in my eyes, turned to the others and said, earlier, everyone pointed out Pei Wan's faults. It shows this daughter-in-law truly has shortcomings. Pei Wan acknowledges them all. But please allow Pei Wan to ask a few questions. May I inquire, mother-in-law, when my younger brother-in-law came to request silver, I also mentioned the amount was too large and shouldn't be spent lightly. Yet he caused a scene in the inner quarters, claiming you had agreed. Is that truly the case? Mother-in-law flatly denied it. Of course it's false. I pressed on, then why did I send people to seek your verification, yet you always shut yourself away? Mother-in-law opened her mouth, stubbornly insisting, I'm of advanced years. Naturally, I've relinquished authority to you. If I meddled in every matter, what would others say about me? As she was about to concede defeat, father-in-law immediately interjected, if that's the case, am I dead? Why didn't you ask me? I replied, I did ask. My father-in-law immediately retorted with righteous indignation, you dare slander me in front of everyone. When did I ever see you ask me? I said, ever since I entered this household, I've meticulously recorded my husband's monthly health status and submitted it to you for review. This matter was included in those reports. Father-in-law never responded before, so I assumed it was tacit approval. Naturally, I believed it to be true. Or could it be that father-in-law never looked at them at all? My father-in-law. Of course he wouldn't admit it, of course I looked. How could he confess to ignoring his own son, leaving him to fend for himself? But if he had looked, why would this incident even happen? My father-in-law stammered, perhaps. I overlooked it. I chimed in, overlooked it? Once? My younger brother-in-law withdrew silver over 10 times, and I recorded each withdrawal. Father-in-law overlooked them all. Father-in-law. Du Rollin sneered coldly. At this point, what wasn't clear? He couldn't be bothered to argue, as if his heart had grown utterly cold. He simply stated, if father and mother truly favor the youngest son so much, exploiting my frail health and bullying my lawful wife, then today I shall summon the clan elders. Let them all witness as I am expelled from the family registry, left to fend for myself. How dare you? Family matters must not be aired publicly. You seek to shame this old man. The father roared in fury. Du Rollin retorted just as fiercely, but is it not shameful for father and mother to bully the eldest son's wife to secure the youngest son's inheritance? Who else is to blame but you, this sickly weakling, for failing to protect her when she married you? Du Rollin had no grasp of the gravity of the situation. He only knew his eldest brother and parents had finally torn apart their facade, so he might as well speak his mind. Little did he know that these words plunged the entire room into silence. The silence was broken by a servant from my mother's household rushing in with urgent news. Miss, hurry home. Something has happened to the master. What exactly had happened? It seemed his concubine had shown up yesterday with her son, flaunting their presence, only to be driven away by my mother for making baseless accusations. That night, my father and mother had a fierce argument. Essentially, he wanted to take the concubine as a secondary wife and have the child recognized as his own, or else he would divorce my mother. Either way, the concubine's uproar had destroyed the good reputation he'd spent years cultivating. But my mother only gave a cold laugh. She refused to accept the concubine. If he divorced her, she'd report him to the authorities. She hadn't committed any of the 7 grounds for divorce. Father accused her of jealousy, but when he took a concubine, he was merely pretending to be sentimental. She was the one who refused. She hadn't borne him a son, but father had boasted to his colleagues that she was all he wanted, that sons meant nothing to him. The fault wasn't hers. She had all the time in the world to wait. But asking her to leave and make room for someone else? In his dreams. Enraged, father stormed out of the house, presumably to seek out that mistress. Unexpectedly, he walked in on her and her lover in the act. Well, now he couldn't even be sure if his son was his. Blinded by fury, he collapsed on the spot, struck by a stroke. Seeing this, the mistress and her lover, fearing a fatal outcome, fled in the dead of night, taking the child with them. By the time anyone found him, he was merely twitching, unable to utter a single word. My mother was quite pleased. I only intended to break his spirit. Who knew he'd be so fragile? Well, paralyzed is best, at least he won't be a thorn in my side. Ah Wan, this is the fate of a faithless man. By the way, your mother-in-law didn't succeed, did she? Indeed, it was all part of my plan. While Du Rollin recuperated these past days, I knew he would awaken today. I knew his mother-in-law had sent that mistress to cause trouble. I even knew my younger brother-in-law was gambling away the money. But it didn't quite play out as his mother-in-law had imagined. My younger brother-in-law wasn't putting on a show of gambling, he was doing it for real. Now, her scheme has failed, and she's lost both her man and her money. On the way back, Du Rollin was unusually silent. It wasn't until nightfall that he finally spoke to me. Awan, I intend to take this year's imperial examinations. Du Ruoting's words had truly struck a nerve. He said, I thought if I just let myself fade away, they'd be satisfied. But I never imagined they'd rush to harm you before I could even die and give you a divorce letter to leave. He's right. I'm useless, so they dare to act. He wasn't inherently malicious, it was just that his prolonged illness had sharpened his words. But deep down, he still didn't want to drag me down with him. So he said, I'll try to live a little longer, at least, to make sure you're taken care of. See, he was so gullible, actually believing that without him, I'd suffer terribly. I smiled, brushing away a tear, nestled into his embrace, and replied, then you must live longer. The child prodigy truly lived up to his name. After deciding to take the imperial examinations, he personally sought out the old chancellor. The old statesman, who valued talent, was naturally delighted to hear the news. He was eager to impart all his knowledge. Thus, he's been quite busy these days, even worrying that his mother-in-law might give me a hard time in his absence. But this time, he's overthinking it. His mother-in-law has no time to spare for him, let alone to trouble me. First, Du Ruoting is also taking the imperial examinations this time. Second, Du Qianer and Huo Yan's wedding is approaching. As the eldest daughter-in-law, I naturally have to help with the preparations. She'd have to be out of her mind to make things difficult for me now. If I truly acted maliciously, I'd be ruining her daughter's wedding. Besides, I have no time to engage in her schemes, for I'm far too occupied. While Du Qianer's wedding doesn't demand my full attention, I absolutely cannot entrust Du Ruoting's medicine to others. And there's another crucial matter I must prepare for. My younger sister, Pei Shu, was also getting married. Her husband was the same man she had married in my previous life. His family wasn't particularly distinguished, but his overall circumstances were quite favorable. Mother had chosen him carefully. In my previous life, my sister had lived happily after marrying him, the couple was deeply in love, and she got along well with her sisters-in-law. Therefore, when Mother asked my opinion, I raised no objections. Yet on her wedding day, my sister gazed at the two jade headdresses and asked me in puzzlement, didn't Mother give one to each of us sisters? Why is yours being given to me too? I shook my head, this is for the obedient child. Since you disobeyed, you cannot have it. Back then I was too young, believing that being with the one I loved was all that mattered. So I paid no heed to anything else. But I forgot that hearts change easily, and people say old hearts change easily. So I truly didn't deserve to have this headdress. And I truly deserved to suffer the consequences. On the way back, I encountered Huo Yan blocking the path. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. He looked haggard, as if he'd been drinking. Fortunately, there was no one around. I saw him calmly. What do you mean, brother-in-law? He was about to marry Du Qianer. Yet he didn't seem happy either. Drunk and tearful, he laughed bitterly. Awan, don't call me your brother-in-law. Why did it turn out this way? Why? This lifetime, I didn't choose you. Why am I still overshadowed by my brother? Why didn't the princess choose me? Why must I settle for marrying Du Qianer? I thought I'd marry the princess. Then you wouldn't feel wronged as her concubine. But why is everything so different from what I imagined? He rambled on, but I understood. And I laughed. So he dared to live another life, not marrying me was one thing, but expecting me to be his concubine? Did he truly believe I, Pei Wan, could be blind twice? Huo Yan, you're arrogant and conceited, yet you forget that beyond every person lies another, beyond every sky lies another heaven. Those with true talent shine brightly wherever they go, regardless of whether you exist or not. I'm truly grateful heaven gave me a second chance. Otherwise, my child and I would only have endured a life of hardship with you. Child? What child? Huo Yan sobered instantly, his eyes snapping to me. I drew the curtain down, my voice dripping with scorn, the one you pushed away that night when you were drunk. 2 months ago. I buried him in the courtyard. That fresh mound of earth. Huo Yan froze in place, utterly still. And so the days passed. Huo Yanzhou married Du Qian'er, but their union was far from harmonious. Du Qian'er was strong-willed, while Huo Yanzhou, convinced of his own unrecognized talent, craved a gentle, magnanimous, and understanding ideal wife. Du Qian'er was clearly not that woman. Thus, their faces were already unsettled on the day they returned to her family home. And a year later, Du Qian'er stubbornly refused to let Huo Yan take a concubine. Huo Yan kept a mistress and staged a rescue of a courtesan. One farce followed another. But none of that concerned me anymore. Because Du Ruolin had passed the imperial examination. He was the top scholar. On the day the results were announced, we were overjoyed. Father-in-law looked deep in thought. Mother-in-law's face darkened to the extreme. The reason was simple: Du Ruoting had failed the exams. When they found him, he was still gambling wildly in the gambling den. Father-in-law had him beaten according to family law. But it was useless. He couldn't quit, couldn't change. His mother had tried to intervene, but whenever she did, Du Ruoting would shout, "You're siding with Du Ruolin too, aren't you? Seeing I failed, you're just shifting your allegiance. Father favors him now, and so do you?" His mother was left with grievances she couldn't voice. Du Ruoting, however, was utterly fearless, so what if he passed? He's a sickly weakling who'll be dead in a few years. Then the entire estate will be mine. Let's see who takes care of you in your old age. He was utterly spoiled. He even ran into Huo Yan at a brothel, who was there to drown his sorrows after being upstaged by his younger brother. The two men, both convinced they were unappreciated talents whose moments had been stolen by their siblings, instantly recognized kindred spirits. They became close confidants. Back then, no one could have imagined that two insignificant men would cause such a colossal disaster. Huo Yan and Du Ruoting were determined to make their mark. They actually opened a gambling den, embezzling public funds to cover the deficit. The day it was uncovered, his mother-in-law fainted on the spot. His father-in-law was severely reprimanded by the emperor. Over the years, he had long since lost the emperor's favor. After Du Ruolin entered officialdom, the old chancellor naturally favored him over his own son. Now, with Du Ruoting's latest blunder, the old chancellor seemed to age 10 years overnight. Conversely, Du Ruolin became the emperor's favorite. By then, we had been married for 4 years, yet he remained frail and sickly. But contrary to everyone's expectations, he didn't suddenly kick the bucket. Instead, my mother-in-law came to plead for Du Ruoting's mercy. Accompanying her was Du Qian'er. This was clearly a prearranged move, for they didn't come alone, they brought elders from the clan to exert collective pressure. Unexpectedly, before they could speak, Du Ruolin took a stack of papers from my hands. He began, "You've arrived just in time." Ruolin was about to consult the clan elders. Mother and sister have caused no end of trouble these years, bringing unrest to the household. But they have recently repented and wish to voluntarily enter the Buddhist hall to practice and atone. When did I ever say that? Du Qian'er shrieked. Du Ruolin, I came here demanding you save my husband, Huo Yan. Ruolin, what nonsense are you spouting? My mother-in-law felt a bad premonition and turned to me, was it you? Did you sow discord between my son and me? Her eye for people was spot on. It really was me. Du Ruolin passed the papers down. These are bribes my dear mother collected over the years under father's name, all squandered by my younger brother. These detail the trouble my younger sister caused with her husband, a private family matter, yet because her brother-in-law was promiscuous, she nearly beat a courtesan to death in secret. Now that my younger brother and sister-in-law have been exiled 3,000 li away, these sordid deeds can no longer be concealed. Do you all believe mother and my sister are truly repentant in seeking monastic practice at the Buddhist hall? As soon as he finished speaking, those who had been defending his mother-in-law and Duchenne immediately changed their tune. Yes. Of course. In my opinion, they should stay there for life. That sincerity is what matters. Send them off quickly. Not sending them? Were they waiting for the truth to come out and bring shame upon the entire clan? Whether they wanted to go or not was irrelevant. As the mother-in-law and Duchenne were dragged away, the former still refused to accept her fate. You ungrateful son. How dare you treat your own mother this way? Don't forget, I gave birth to you. And your father? You dared to deal with me behind his back. How audacious! Duchenne, however, had clearly lost her nerve. She was begging for mercy. Brother, I was wrong. I truly was wrong. I won't dare again. Sister-in-law. Sister-in-law. Please speak for me. I truly was wrong. Du Rollin remained unmoved. Father is currently summoned by His Majesty. He likely can't protect himself, let alone our mother. To be honest, it's all because mother accepted bribes in father's name. As for mother's kindness in giving birth to me. He looked at his mother-in-law. I also don't understand why mother always favored my younger brother. When I was 10, it was clearly my brother who pushed me into the lake. Why did mother order me never to speak of it again? All these years, my brother has done as he pleased. I've been gravely ill, yet you've never once properly looked after me. Very well. I'll agree to your demand and never mention his pushing me. Consider that repayment for your kindness in bearing me. His words were final, leaving no room for compromise. The mother-in-law paused, eyes widening. Du Rollin. Pei Wan. May you both rot in hell. Her voice grew fainter and fainter until it vanished. Du Rollin stood motionless. Only after everyone had dispersed. He suddenly asked me blankly, Awan, did I do the wrong thing? The next moment, he coughed up blood and collapsed into my arms. Rollin. For the first time in all these years, I felt utterly panicked. Yet he smiled weakly. Enough. All these years, I held on by a thread. Finally, I've secured a proper place for you. Since that's the case, it's enough. My eyes reddened, and I wept uncontrollably. Don't talk nonsense. Don't die. But how could death be so easily defied? Du Rollin gave a bitter smile. Awan, don't cry. I'm sorry. From now on, you'll suffer. My tears fell upon his face, yet I declared, of course I'll cry. But what suffering could I possibly endure? I am now the matriarch of the Du family. All of the Du family's vast wealth is mine. I just need to cry. I cry for the unlucky little one in my belly, who lost his father before he was even born. Du Rollin. Du Rollin's eyes, which had been about to close, suddenly snapped open. What did you say? He snapped to attention, struggling to lift his arms from my embrace. Put me down. I can still live. My tears turned to laughter. He was lying. Du Rollin ultimately lived to 37. The physician said it was a miracle. The year he died, our son was 14. He had arranged for him to study under the greatest Confucian scholar of the age and secured me the title of first-rank noble consort. Everything was meticulously arranged. Even in death, his wife, son, and estate would not be coveted by his clan. Before passing, he leaned against me, his voice finally at peace. All these years, I never asked you that question. Now, if I asked, you might not tell me what I want to hear just to deceive me. So, Awan, I'll ask you another question instead. I asked him, what is it? He strained to speak. If we were to meet again in the next life, would you still choose to be my wife? I had no more fake tears left to shed. Once, to spur him to establish himself, I feigned tears to drive him to pass the imperial examinations. Later, to buy him more time, to spare our child from being born only to find itself an orphan with a widowed mother, I squeezed out a few more drops. Now, with all hope lost, I had no tears left to shed. Yet somehow, this felt more agonizing than crying ever had. For the first time, I realized that even in deepest sorrow, a smile could still emerge. I replied, "You fool. If not you, then who else would I marry?" He smiled contentedly, then slowly closed his eyes. They never opened again. He was gone. This time, truly. And I, Pei Wan, daughter-in-law of the Minister of Rights, wife of the Right Chancellor, mother of the Marquis of Wu in the later court, a noble lady by imperial decree. I lived 86 years. Throughout my life, I managed the inner quarters, weathering all the ups and downs. Yet I remain grateful that Du Ruolin never asked if I loved him. For even I did not know the answer. If blame must be placed, blame my father's so-called devotion, nothing but illusion. Blame also that in my previous life, I met Huo Yan instead of him. One may stumble twice, but never thrice into the same pit. With Du Ruolin, I dared not gamble, nor wish to. I didn't know if I loved him, but when he asked me before his death if I'd marry him again in the next life, I didn't hesitate. I would. Du Ruolin. If there is a next life, I would marry you again. The story ends here. Thank you all for your company. See you in the next one.